The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games. Check out all their awesome titles at playtmg.com.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review IDW Games' Arcane Academy. Then they look back at their review of Rococo in their Dukes Double-Take. And finally, they talk about combo play in games. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody! Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And this is episode 114, Spell of the Ball.
Nice.
Yeah, very nice.
Right, got it in under the wire.
Yes, this was a late entry, literally the last entry about an hour before we recorded.
Yep. And Jeremy Robinson, congrats. That's your first time naming a Dukes of Dice episode. If you want to name a Dukes of Dice episode, throw your hat in the ring to try and do that. We have a guild. Go to BoardGameGeek.com. It's guild number 2008. And we have a thread for each week's episode where you can do just that.
Absolutely. In addition to naming the episode, you can talk about the game we're reviewing, the discussion topic, all that stuff, and we would love it if you would go over and do that. In fact, I was talking with Steve O'Rourke, the name father, on Facebook. I think you were too earlier in the week.
Yes.
And we're kind of talking about how there's so much excitement generated for the Dukes on Deck, which is the thread in our guild for what's coming up on the next episode, that the post-show thread kind of gets ignored. Whereas in most other podcast guilds, that's kind of the one where there's all the talk and the hubbub about. So maybe just a call to action. If you want to continue the discussion that we start here, head on over to that show thread after the episode drops, and you can keep the Duke talk going on.
Or if you don't, that's cool too.
Yeah, thanks.
It's fine.
Just kidding.
All right, show business. Extra Life's coming up.
It sure is. November 5th, if you don't know what this is, it is a charity event where players all around the world are going to be playing board games or video games for 24 hours straight, but they're doing it for a good cause to raise money for their local Children's Miracle Network hospital. Here in the Duke City, the Dukes are playing for UNM, University of New Mexico's Children's Hospital, an awesome organization that we are happy to support. This is now our third year doing this, and we're going to be playing games over at Empire Board Game Library. So we've got a team page for all the people participating at Empire. We're going to put a link in our show notes, and if you want to help support children's hospitals, you can do that there, and we would really appreciate it. And as always, this will be our third annual episode that we live record there, where you can see mostly my descent into madness as we record like once every hour and a half for a quick little update.
Because typically these are on weekends, and I work on weekends, so unfortunately there's a big gap in the middle of that day where I will not be there.
Yeah. So, but we're looking forward to it. It's gonna be awesome. I'm a little nervous though, because I'm pretty exhausted the next day.
Yeah.
Obviously. And I have to edit the podcast. Yes, indeed.
Good luck with that.
Anyway, so you can also support the Dukes once you're done being generous and charitable. I was about to say charitous, but that's the totally wrong word.
Might be fine.
Maybe it is, but we'll go with charitable. Once you're done being charitable for a great cause, you can also support the Dukes of Dice. We do have a Patreon page. It's patreon.com/Dukes of Dice to help us out with some show costs and equipment and things like that. We have two brand new Patreon nights. Just want to give them a quick shout out and a big thanks. So Emily Nielsen, thank you very much. Brand new Knight of the Duchy, and also another Knight, Barry Rosas.
BJ from Board Game Gumbo.
Absolutely. So thank you both. We really appreciate it. And if you're so inclined, you want to take a look at that, feel free. We would love that.
All right, on to what we played this week. Sean, why don't you kick us off?
So Alex, I played a really long game.
Yes, you did.
No, it was not really long, but for some reason, in your mind, you thought it was like super long. It was a solid 90 minutes.
All right, here's the thing. I thought we had arranged earlier in the week that right at 6 or pretty close to it, that I was going to teach you Tiny Epic Western, and we were going to play Tiny Epic Western.
Okay.
And then I get in there, and I was a lover scorned in this case, Sean.
Were you there at 6?
I was not there at exactly 6.
Okay,
It was pretty close to 6.
You left me waiting.
It was like 6:10.
Okay.
Come on.
It was like 8:50.
And you didn't text and be like, hey, where you at, bro? Anyway, yeah, I got kind of annoyed about the whole thing. And then ultimately played Arcane Academy without you.
Yeah. Hey, let me talk about the game now.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
It's Clank. It's Clank from Renegade Games. And this is a deck builder, a true deck builder, not a game with deck building elements. However, I'm not crazy about deck builders because I'm no longer that crazy about just deck building for the sake of deck building. But when you're doing something with that, so for example, when you have a game like Trains, which is basically a Dominion clone, but you're doing stuff on the board, you're creating a route, network of these trains and creating these stations and things like that. I like that a little bit better. Well, that's what this game does. So you're deck building, but you're moving a piece of yours around on a board to go exploring this house and then the depths below. You're trying to score some artifacts, some treasure, and then get out of the house, get out back to the exit, kind of before everyone else or before everyone's killed. Because as you're doing these things, you're going to be getting attacked by a dragon who's jealous and, protecting his gold and his treasures and things like that. So it's a very, very recognizable deck building game in that you have a deck of 10 cards. There are different types of currency. There's your skill, which is kind of your base buy. There's an attack, which you'll use to attack cards in the dungeon row. And then there's also a movement currency, which is what you're using to move from adjacent spot to adjacent spot. But what's really cool is some of the spots are just one space away. Others have extra of the foot symbols on them, which means you need to spend multiple movement to get there. Other spots are these crystal caverns, which will stop your movement. Other spots, you have to fight through goblins, which means you need some swords, otherwise you're going to take damage. So really cool use of basically 3 different currencies there. And so you're going to buy new cards from the center row and attack cards in the center row. And as you're doing these, though, you're generating noise or clank. Hey, that's the name of the game. So certain actions will generate more clank. And as you generate clank, you're putting one of your color cubes in the clank area. And then at certain points, whenever a certain type of card is flipped that has the dragon head, it's going to trigger a dragon attack. So all of those cubes get thrown into a bag. There are some black cubes, which are neutral cubes, and you're going to pull out a certain number of cubes from the bag. And if you pull out the colors of the player colors, that's damage. And if you take enough damage, you're dead. You're not out of the game necessarily if you're dead. It triggers the end game, and there's basically 4 more rounds. But if you haven't reached at least back up to the upper level, then you don't get to keep your stuff. This was excellent. This was really and truly excellent. I enjoy Trains a decent amount. This felt like a good deck building game with a really interesting something to do built on top of it. And not in a way that just kind of felt, as much as I love Trains, it was very much Dominion plus. This is its own game. It uses some familiar stuff, but it was really good. And everyone at the table really enjoyed it.
It seemed to get a great reception.
Yeah, I am very excited for this. I was almost about to say, let's play this again right afterwards, but we had other stuff to do.
Whoa, easy there.
Yeah.
Easy there.
Yeah, I know. But I really enjoyed it.
Boy, if you want me to just storm out of that place, then that would have been a good option.
Hilarious. But no, I think it was fantastic. So this actually just came out, I think, this last week. So go check it out from Renegade Games. It was really good.
Renegade Games in general actually has been doing pretty well. I mean, Lotus is well stocked at Empire now. There's plenty of copies available.
I wasn't going to mention it this episode, but I did get to play it last Friday on the Dukes of Dice date night, which
which does not involve me, by the way.
No, it does not. Well,
it's a ducal we.
It does sometimes.
Yeah,
those
pretty
are
rarely.
always awkward. But we got to play Lotus, which is really, really good. Really simple, beautiful game. Also from Renegade. So Renegade is, I think they're really stepping up a notch. So, but anyway, that's Clank. Go check it out. I am very excited for where it plays.
So while Sean was doing that, I was busy being a responsible Duke and playing games we're going to review in the near future. Just saying.
Yep.
But this one I'm about to talk about is not one of them. I was playing Race for the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Not Roll for the Galaxy, but Race for the Galaxy. Only the second time I played this. So for folks who don't know, if you know Roll, Race is the card implementation of it, but it was really the other way around.
Yeah.
Because Race came first. This game, you're basically choosing different phases a la, was it Puerto Rico?
San Juan.
San Juan.
Yeah. Action selection.
Action selection. You're each going to choose an action on your turn.
Or phase selection, whatever.
Sure. And you'll only go through the phases that everyone ultimately selects. So you might skip certain phases of the game. If you choose a phase, you typically get a benefit in that phase. You're building developments that'll give you certain powers. You're building worlds. You're trying to produce goods on those worlds, sell goods, conquer planets, that sort of thing in Race for the Galaxy. It's interesting, the comparison, and what I heard at Empire about this, and I don't know if you agree with this, Sean, Roll for the Galaxy is the more fun game, but Race for the Galaxy is the better game.
I would agree with that. And in the same way, I enjoy Roll more, but I think Race is the better game.
I don't know if I totally agree with that piece of it. I can kind of see where people may get that. What's interesting is both of those games have AP moments in kind of the same area.
Nope, but go on.
What? What?
To the AP, but go on.
Oh, maybe not for you. Okay.
Well, when you play enough, you know all the cards.
Right.
So anyway,
I don't know all the cards.
No.
I don't know all the cards. So this one, I got a little bit of AP just kind of reading through the cards and the different abilities and what they do and trying to understand them, and also understanding the different phase benefits, because you don't know exactly what all the different phase benefits. Sure. Whereas with Roll for the Galaxy, some of the AP with that one comes into play with assigning the dice. Where does this one dice that you get to freely assign each round, where's that one going to go? Which one's it going to be? How do you manage your resource stockpile? I find Roll a better, at least for me, more enjoyable. I don't know if that makes it a better game, but I would rather play Roll over Race just about any day. I could see Race being a better app game, though. I could see having more fun with Race on an app.
Well, it's actually on Board Game Arena, Alex.
Oh.
Maybe we could play Race on Board Game Arena.
We could do it during this episode?
As you had agreed to play Race, almost everyone in Empire was like, wait, is Alex about to play Race? Really? Is this going to happen? I think we were just all surprised.
Why?
Because I didn't think you liked the game.
I wasn't in love with it for sure, but I like Roll a lot.
Yeah.
Really like Roll.
Yeah. I think I've played I can't find it right now, but I think I've played 60 or 70 times, which is not a lot in the grand scheme of things. It's enough to at least become familiar with it. Yeah, no, I love Race. I think it's just fantastic. Race of the Galaxy is a great game.
Cool. So that's what I had fun with. Over to you, Sean.
So on Sunday, our buddy Nick, who is one of our Patreon Dukes, he invited a couple of us over. His buddy from out of town was in town, and he invited Matthew, Jeremy, and I over to play Mutant Chronicles. No, not the new one that just ended on Kickstarter, but the original game from the 90s. So this is a one versus many dungeon crawl-ish game, except that the one is rotating every mission. And we were trying to play through the entire campaign, which is 10 scenarios. We only got through 5. And
slackers.
I know. We started at 8:30 in the morning, and we played through till about 5.
By the way, the Duchy Mountain Retreat is super cool.
Yeah, so Nick lives out in the East Mountains, so it's our Duchy Mountain Retreat. It's a very cool place. Awesome gaming loft. And he had it all set up, ready to go. He had the game was set up, miniatures were out. These are kind of the old Citadel-style miniatures from the early 90s, where they're kind of they're posing with their arms up, because it has to be a flat mold, so it's not a very dynamic-looking pose, which is pretty typical of miniatures of that era. And it was fun. We had a lot of fun. The game definitely showed its age in a lot of ways. And I think for Nick and his buddy, who have been playing this for years and years, there's probably a big nostalgia factor here. But we had a lot of fun. It uses a system where you're getting experience points as you kill items, or as you kill the enemy. And you also get points when you're the bad guy. And as you gain these points, your two characters, because you have a team of 2, they're leveling up. And so the way Nick puts it is the game starts off as fairly cooperative, because you're all kind of working together to beat the scenario. And then it becomes cooperation as you're still kind of working together, but you may be trying to hinder people, because there are these cards you can play, and a card can either help you or hurt your opponents or your teammates, or whatever you want to call them. And then as the game goes into layer scenarios, which we didn't quite get into, then it comes down to full-blown competition as you're trying to shoot people out of the way so you can actually shoot the bad guys. It was a lot of fun, but I think that means that I'm very excited for the new version that's going to be coming out about a year from now that just finished up on Kickstarter, because it's Richard Borg, it's Kevin J. Wilson, it's Eric Lang. To me, so it was always Richard Borg, right? But now he's had time to kind of refine this design. I think it's going to get some updated tweaking. It's going to have more modern design sensibilities. I think it's going to be pretty cool, and I'm pretty excited for it. Interesting bit of news, though. Fantasy Flight is now on board, and I'm not sure if they're involved in just distribution or if they're going to have their imprint on the game, but they're now involved in at least getting it distributed at retail once it fulfills a Kickstarter next year. That's a pretty interesting development. I don't recall them doing something similar in the recent past, but it sounds interesting. So it was a lot of fun. So that's Mutant Chronicles, the original game back from the 90s.
So other than things we're going to be reviewing shortly, either this week or maybe within the next couple of weeks, I did get a bunch of other plays in, but not really new plays. But I do think it's interesting when a game comes off of the shelf a lot and keeps coming off of the shelf. Or in this case, my kind of go bag.
Yeah.
The bag I carry to Empire with me. I finally remembered to put Oh My Goods in there, and we did play Oh My Goods 2 times on the Dukes of Dice game night. Ton of fun. For those of you who haven't heard about this, it's an Alexander Pfister supply chain management game, I think is the best way you can really describe it.
Sure.
With some pressure luck elements. Also got in a play of, yet again, Deep Sea Adventure. That one seems to be hitting the table quite a bit and keeps getting good reception whenever it does. Also got in a play of Patchwork. Played Rory head-to-head in Patchwork. Believe it or not, as many times as this game comes out in Empire, and he just got a couple more demo copies, Patchwork, Rory had only played it once before he played me at this game. Got creamed. I creamed him. He was in the negatives, which does happen with Patchwork easily. But he saw the appeal, and at the same time we were playing it, another couple down on the lower level of Empire was playing it. So that's one that's more and more popular, and it's not surprising to see them getting extra copies for the store.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just always good to know when a game gets repeated plays. I think that's always a really good sign about its staying power. And so far, all 3 of those games have had pretty good staying power at Empire.
Now, you did mention Deep Sea Adventure, right?
I did, absolutely.
So I turned to you at one point while I was playing Clank. I said, you know what? Clank is kind of like Deep Sea Adventure, just on steroids.
Okay.
And you said, yeah, but is it 10 minutes long? I'm like, well, no.
Because I was kind of bitter about time at that point. Whatever.
All right. Well, the last game that I will talk about is Tiny Epic Western, which apparently I missed our appointment for. I apologize.
Jerk.
So this was one that, did I tell the story last episode where my copy is? I forgot.
Yes, yeah, you did tell that story.
I forgot to fill out the pledge manager.
Yes.
Are you sure I told it on the episode?
Yes, yes, you did.
So anyway, I forgot to fill out the pledge manager, but they have my copy out. It's on its way. And so you didn't play this game with me, but you taught it to us.
I did play it again last night.
Oh, did you?
On Wednesday night. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh man, I had to get out there early. I had an early morning today.
Well, no, I got it in while you were playing Clank, I think.
Oh, yeah. But I'm saying, but then you taught us.
Yes.
Okay, your timeline's fuzzy.
Whatever.
Anyway, so you taught it to us, and this was interesting because how do I put this? Not often will someone teach me a game and then I look at the first round and I think to myself, I have no idea what I'm doing. And it had nothing to do with your teaching of it. And I'm just going to try stuff because I'm not really sure what to do. And I don't experience that a lot. Usually I'm like, oh, okay, I may not have it down perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I at least can see, oh, I think this would be good. This would be a good early couple moves. No, for whatever reason, this game was really confusing to me at first, despite it not being, being kind of lighter fare in terms of that Tiny Epic series. I think it's probably the most complex and having the most depth of the entire series. I played everything but Defenders. So it was once the first round and a half was over, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. Because there's some worker placement involved, but it's not a normal worker placement. There's different options for a particular slot, and you can move in on someone else's slot and have a duel kind of like you would in Carson City. And then there's some poker hands, which I really enjoyed that aspect of it. I thought that was really cool.
I thought you would absolutely love that piece of things.
So you're playing 3-card poker where all of these buildings are laid out in a circle and different cards are in between them. And you're basically using a card in hand to create a 3-card hand. And it was really cool. I really enjoyed this game. I don't think I enjoyed it as much as you did. And I think from right now, I like Tiny Epic Galaxies better. I am interested in more plays, but it was good, not great. That could change in repeated plays. And we're going to be getting that to the review table soon, or to the review episode, to the review mic.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was good. I enjoyed it, but I need to spend a little more time with it. And I got blown out of the water. Just blown out of the water. And so that was a little frustrating. Unlike some people, it doesn't affect my view of the game.
So what was interesting is Rory played this one a second time. He had played it the first time, really enjoyed it, actually ended up naming a sandwich on the Empire menu. By the way,
oh yeah,
there's now a new, if you're ever in Albuquerque and you end up in Empire, even if we're not there, you can have a little taste of the Dukes. Wait, that's awkward. There's a Dukes of Dice Reuben on the menu, and it's really tasty.
It is really good, but here's an issue with it.
Uh-oh.
So it's sauerkraut, which you'll have in a typical Reuben, and it's got the New Mexico flavor, the Duke City flavor. It's got green chili. I have never had sauerkraut and green chili together. Have you?
No.
Previously?
No, I don't think so.
It's delicious.
Yeah.
But oh my goodness, does it cause me the worst heartburn.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't have that problem.
Yeah, it was super good though. Well, you got a couple years ago.
Yeah, you're kind of old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was really good. And that was very exciting to see that. So thanks, Rory and crew over there at Empire.
Anyway, where were we? Oh, yeah. Rory played this one for a second time, actually named a sandwich on the menu as the Epic Western Sandwich. And then on the second play, Rory got smoked. And really smoked. Built 2 buildings the entire game smoked.
Right.
Which for those who haven't played this game, it's not good at all. And he soured on the game a decent amount as a result of that.
And then you criticized him for not liking the game because he wasn't doing well, to which I then jumped in from the other table saying, wait, are you saying that? And about 15 people started laughing.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
At the same time.
Yeah,
so anyway.
Yeah, okay, great. Anyway, that's what we played. On over to the news desk. All right, first up in news, we're talking about Portal Games, which has a whole bunch of stuff going on over at Essen. Sean, what is going on with Portal?
So as we're recording, it's Thursday night. This is another one of our earlier in the week recordings.
This one's actually Sean's fault.
This is my fault.
For once.
I've got continuing legal education I have to go through all day tomorrow, Friday, and all day Saturday. But anyway.
Don't flunk.
Let's talk. Yeah. So let's talk about Portal Games at Essen right now. It's going on, and we'll have all the latest news from Essen in our next episode. But of course, they're debuting a bunch of stuff over there, including expansions for Hiroshima Hex and Imperial Settlers. Also, the new edition of Robinson Crusoe, which is pretty exciting. But in addition to all of that, they're kind of revealing some more information about some new stuff. So, of course, we've already talked a little bit about First Martians, Adventures on the Red Planet, which is kind of a Robinson Crusoe reskin, but that's going to be coming out January 2017. They've got an expansion for Stronghold, which is technically a Stronghold game, but the Portal's, it's a Portal design. It's a Ignacy design. And this is the Undead expansion, which is actually just a re-release of their 2010 expansion for it. So that's pretty cool. Also, 51st State, which is the reimagining of Imperial Settlers, which is the reimagining of the original 51st State. They've got the Scavengers expansion. I think that's the second expansion for it coming out. And then finally, they're announcing news about Cry Havoc Aftermath, which is the expansion for, of course, the Grant Rodiak game, Cry Havoc, which I am in love with. It is super good. Not to spoil any future review, but
I haven't played it yet.
You haven't
It could be a little while.
And we'll see how that goes. So it's going to include 5 new skills and 3 new structures for each of the factions. And it's going to have a new game mode that lets each game last for 5 full rounds, which is kind of a criticism that I've heard from some people, where you can actually shorten the length of the game depending on how people are doing. It's kind of a weird thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about that fully in the review. So that sounds pretty interesting. I'm very excited. No, don't get me wrong. What's cool about Cry Havoc is that you have 4 asymmetric races that perform very differently. There's a lot to explore in that game. And it's not begging for an expansion by any means, but I'm excited that there's one coming out this quickly for it. So I'm excited for that. So excited to see what Portal's going to have coming out pretty soon.
All right. Next up in news, a Splotter title is getting reprinted.
2, in fact.
Great Zimbabwe and Indonesia. Sean, which of these are you more excited for and why?
Okay, well, go and put your head down, take a nap. I'll wake you up when this is over.
Thanks.
Sure. So
I'm going to go watch, currently Nationals Dodgers are playing, so I might watch that.
Okay.
Live stream or something.
Well, we've reviewed one Splotter game on the podcast before, and that's Food Chain Magnate. One of just a fantastic game. One of my top games of last year. So these are 2 older titles. The Great Zimbabwe is a 2012 game, and Indonesia is a 2005 game. So Great Zimbabwe is actually coming out later this month. And in fact, I've already pre-ordered it. I pre-ordered it like a month or 2 ago. So I'm on board with this. So here's a little something about Great Zimbabwe. In the game, players strive to build the most impressive monuments to one god of their choice. They can choose this god themselves. Each of the 12 gods offers a unique blessing, but each also requires a different amount of work to win the game. Building the monuments is done by developing a logistics network stretching across the region. Through this network, players produce and obtain ritual goods to raise their monuments and bring honor to the god of their choice. So here's the deal with Splotter titles. They are a very small boutique company. Their printing shop is like across the street from them, and they don't do board games typically. So they do very small print runs, and they're very aware of the demand for their games, but they're just going to print what they're going to print. So if you're interested in picking up these Splotter titles, move very quickly. Whenever a new printing to Food Chain Magnate comes out, it's sold out really quickly. So keep an eye out for Great Zimbabwe in October, and then Indonesia, which I'm probably going to pre-order pretty soon here as well, is, again, a 2005 game that's coming out next month, November. In this game, for 2 to 5 players, you're going to build up an economy trying to acquire the most money. Players acquire production companies which produce goods, such as rice, spices, microwavable meals, rubber, and oil, and then shipping companies which deliver goods to cities. As cities receive goods, they grow, increasing their demand. Production companies earn money for each good delivered to a city up to a city's capacity, but they have to pay those companies for the distance traveled. So there's some area control, some bidding, pick up and deliver, some stock aspect to this game too. I've heard amazing things about this. Apparently, the Great Zimbabwe is not super heavy, whereas Indonesia is pretty heavy. So you might
have fun with that one, Sean.
Well, yeah, maybe we can get you to try the Great Zimbabwe.
Maybe
it might be okay.
Maybe.
So excited for that.
Very cool. And finally, in news, we're talking presidential election for our Kickstarter of the week. Presidential Election, the board game, a highly competitive 2-player board game that requires you to outsmart and outmaneuver your opponent to win the ultimate prize, which presumably is the Oval Office, I would think.
Yeah.
Typically. So this is, we had done a review, not a review, but an interview on Campaign Trail.
Yes.
Earlier this year. That was also on Kickstarter. This one is a bit of a different take on the whole presidential race.
That one was more serious, a little bit more of a gamer's
More of a
game.
simulation, really.
A simulation of a campaign, right.
This one is far more on the humor side of things.
Satirical.
Straight up satirical. Oh, yeah, definitely. It has a number of characters, including with the expansions, of course, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump as part of all of this. I don't know, Sean, you took a look at this one.
I did.
What do you think?
It looks interesting. What was frustrating was there wasn't a really good description of the gameplay. There's not a gameplay video. There's a kind of introductory video that kind of talks about some of the stuff. There's no rulebook available. And then the description of the gameplay was very vague. Oh, you can play a scandal card. And then in response to a scandal card, you can play a cover-up card. But I don't know that the rules are actually fleshed out. They didn't give any indication that they were. It's just kind of a general like, oh, well, you might be able to do this. And campaigns have these things, so we're going to include those similar things. So that's always a little worrisome to me when I can't get a good feel for the gameplay because there's not a dedicated gameplay video or a good solid description or a link to a rulebook.
What I noticed that was interesting was it seemed like a disparity in the art. The characters themselves looked really, that kind of political cartoon style, looked really good.
Yeah.
But some of the art on the cards and otherwise didn't really stack up as well. And I thought that was an interesting discrepancy between the two. Yeah. Now, we do see that sometimes with Kickstarter games where the art may only be partially finished or somewhat finished. So that's not necessarily surprising, but just something I noticed as I was looking at this. Sean, what's the track record or history with this company? So
this is their second title. They published another game previously on Kickstarter called Don't Be a Loser, which was a party game. It raised about $20,000 on Kickstarter. They fulfilled, I think, sometime in December of last year or maybe early January of 2016. So they've shown that they can fulfill a Kickstarter. And it looked like, though, it was about a year late after their projection. So it's just something to keep aware of. Again, I enjoy 1960, The Making of a President. I think I'm going to enjoy Campaign Trail. I like that more serious take on it. I did P500, the GMT game Mr. President, which is not a campaign game, but you actually running the country, and it's like an 8-hour solo game.
Right.
Which I'm super excited for.
I am curious if you do like just a separate Dukes of Dice mini episode.
That would be cool.
Of just you playing through that.
Yeah.
And like taking breaks in between and for a few minutes saying what just happened in the country.
Yeah.
I think that'd be really interesting.
Yeah.
But you can put it on hard mode, where everything just explodes in your face.
It's already on hard mode. It's an 8-hour solo game. It's already on hard mode. So I'm not crazy about this kind of satirical take on things myself. And then the lack of really meaty information about the gameplay, it's something that I'm probably going to pass on. However, the price is pretty good. $30 gets you the main game. If you want to spend $44, you can get the main game plus the third-party expansion.
So this one was looking for $2,016. Get it? Get it?
I don't.
It's already well above that at $6,400 of its goal, so it's happening. Oh, it's happening. And I think you have a few weeks to back this. I don't remember what the end date is.
28 days from now. We didn't put the date down.
I think it might be the actual day of the election.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
I guess.
Anyway, or somewhere close to that. So check this out if you're interested in a satirical take on the election. That's Presidential Election, the board game. And that is a look at the news.
So, Alex, what would you say is your top game so far of 2016?
Urban Garage, Sean, it's Scythe.
Oh, you like that one, do you?
I do like Scythe.
Yeah, me too.
But you know what, Sean?
Yeah.
A big obstacle is setting up and breaking down that game.
It sure is. In fact, Jamie Stegmaier even has to put on the side of the box where stuff goes, but even then you've got all these bags, all these containers. It's kind of a mess.
Yeah.
But fortunately, our buddies over at Meeple Realty, Lee and Tommy, have put together an amazing Scythe insert that not only fits all of the pieces for the base game, whether it's the basic edition, whether it's the collector's edition, but it also is going to hold the pieces for the expansion, Invaders from Afar.
Very cool. So if you need some better way of storing Scythe, give Meeple Realty a look. Meeple Realty, think inside the box. This week, we're talking about an Eric Lang game that was, believe it or not, criminally underhyped in my mind. It's Arcane Academy. We'll get into it.
So Arcane Academy, the new IDW game designed by board game designing rock star Eric Lang, one of my favorite designers.
Yes.
So this is a bit of a combo game, and it's at its heart a really simple action selection game, I think. it's not that difficult to teach, but offers some interesting choices and some interesting combos. So I did mention that Eric Lang was the designer. I forgot to mention Kevin Wilson, another prolific designer who's working on Mutant Chronicles along with Eric and Richard Borg. Just want to make sure that's clear out there that this is both an Eric Lang and a Kevin Wilson game. So in Arcane Academy, you are a student at a magical school, not Hogwarts, because that would be copyright infringement, and you don't want to do that.
Well, and beyond that, this is actually taken from its own intellectual property.
I'm not particularly familiar with the comic. Are you, Alex?
Not even remotely, to the point where it's not one that you identify as an intellectual property game.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, in fact, initially. So you have this tableau in front of you, which has 4 tiles in the corners, and there's an additional, what is that? Maybe another 16 empty spots in between. It's a 4x5 or a 4x6 grid. And in each of these corners, there are the basic actions that you can take, because on your turn, you're going to be either take an action or rest. So to take an action, you take an exhaust cube and you place on one of the action spots. So there is a spot that gets you 1 shard, a magical shard, which is 1 type of currency, or will, which is the 2nd type of currency. You can also take a tile from the pool of tiles to add to your board. You could take an action which is going to let you trigger one of the assignment cards that you've previously played. You can take another action that's going to let you actually claim an assignment tile, which costs you some amount of shards or will. Now, here's the cool thing. When you place these new tiles, you can put it wherever you want on your board. And in subsequent turns, you can place exhaustion tokens on those to take that extra action. However, some of the tiles are going to have these semicircles on either 0 to 4 of the sides of the tiles. And if you connect those circles to other tiles, it's going to let you chain actions into one another. So a really powerful tile, one that might, say, give you 2 will and 2 shards, has 0 connections. So if you ever want to activate it, you're going to activate just itself. But a weaker tile that maybe just gives you either 1 will or 1 shard might have 3 connections, or there's one, for example, the activate a card with an activate ability has 4 connections around it. And so what I'm able to do is when I activate a particular tile, I resolve that action first, and then any of the connected tiles that are orthogonally adjacent to it that aren't exhausted, I get to activate them in an order of my choice. So ideally, I'm getting multiple actions in a turn. And so that's one part of where the combo of this game comes together, because you're doing like 2, 3, 4 actions at a time, or more if you can work it. Now, to win this game, you're going to need the most points, and points are going to be determined at the end once a player completes 8 of their assignments. And again, you're spending will or shards on these assignments. Now, some of these things are going to give you some immediate effect. Some of them might give you extra shards, like maybe you spend will and you get shards. Others are going to give you an ability to maybe unexhaust one of your tiles or exhaust your entire tile, and they're also going to be worth some amount of points. Others might give you an ongoing ability or an endgame scoring ability. And so you're going to continue this till someone plays out 8 cards, play an extra round, and then you add up all the points. Whoever has the most points is going to be the winner of Arcane Academy. Pretty quick teach, actually.
Very quick teach.
Yeah.
Especially, and a good amount going on for as quick of a teach as it is.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool. To clarify something, by the way, from earlier, this comes from the comic series, not Arcane Academy, but Finding Gossamer is the name of it. It's written by David A. Rodriguez. In the world of Gossamer, power is as simple as comprehension. A spell is a theorem, and the theorem must be written in the air and proven for it to take hold. Denny's unique gift allows him to solve theorems that would drive anyone else insane, but he doesn't think of the world on those terms. He can only solve problems, not consider the appropriate answer for a situation. Fortunately, the children are befriended by allies who strive to send the stranded siblings home before dark forces can use the boy's power for evil. So that's some background on the IP this is based off of. And I think because it's not named the same, it's easy to maybe miss the connection. I'm sure there are diehard fans of this series that probably realize the connection. You don't need to know anything about this IP to enjoy this game at all.
No.
So let's get into it. Sean, rulebook.
You should be the one to talk about rulebook, because I've leafed through it after you taught me the game, and from what I can tell, you taught it to me accurately. So
that's good.
Huzzah!
That's always a good thing.
Yes.
And I think part of what helped with that is I ended up learning this one from Eric Lang at Dice Tower Con.
Oh, there you go.
He was shopping it around and showing it off to people. It was a pre-production version, I believe.
Okay.
Almost finished version. Prototype-ish. Anyway.
So did you read the rulebook?
I did. I had to. Oh, yeah. Because I had to refresh myself. And let's state right now, pretty early on in the review, this was a review copy, though a mysterious review copy, in that I'd asked for a review copy and then it mysteriously showed up.
Sure. So thank you to IDW.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. But just for full disclosure, so that's out there. I thought the rulebook was very easy to understand. It's not a difficult game to learn. In fairness, I had a bit of a leg up because I learned it in part from the designer. I really enjoyed this. There's not much that you really have to go back to the rulebook for. I think it lays out things pretty clearly. Things like it doesn't exhaust other... the most complicated thing to explain in this game is how the combos work.
Sure.
When you exhaust a tile, it's the tiles immediately connected to it. It doesn't go in a full chain.
Oh, man, that'd be crazy.
That would be crazy.
Bonkers.
And it doesn't exhaust the other tiles. And if those tiles are already exhausted, it doesn't affect that tile. And you have to do the one that you activated first and then the other ones. It lays all that out very clearly, with good pictures demonstrating a game situation where this might come up. I thought it was a fine rulebook. Very, very well done visually, and I didn't have a hard time learning the game from it.
Sure. And from what I could tell from my kind of quick skim through, seemed solid. Now, the components and art here, most of the art you're going to see on the assignment cards. And I thought it was good. I thought it was solid. I mean, comic book style art, which is something I would expect. I thought it looked good. The iconography was incredibly clear. I mean, really simple iconography is all that's needed here. The thickness of the tiles, the action tiles, I thought was fine. The player boards are not boards. They're just a thick card. I
don't think it's even card. It's more plasticky.
Well, no, it's got a linen finish to it.
Right.
But it's a card stock.
Yeah.
I guess I would have preferred to see an actual board, but it's not a big deal, I don't think. The weird thing though is that the board or the player mat is double-sided, but it's the exact same setup.
Right.
It would have been interesting had there been a base setup where everyone has the same thing, and then maybe there's a different alternate board. There's 4 different types of boards on the reverse sides.
Castles of Burgundy style.
Yeah, that would have been interesting. I thought it was kind of a missed opportunity, but maybe there were some balance issues that they were concerned about. But ultimately, I think it's a great implementation in terms of components. You've got the shards, which are just those like red crystals. Now the will is tracked with a dial tracker.
And that is the one thing I didn't understand. I wasn't sure why you wouldn't have had some sort of different, maybe like little blue brains or something else. Obviously, that's going to add to the cost whenever you do that. But a couple of things with the dials. One, they felt a little, even when assembled, felt a little kind of flimsy.
Sure.
Like it wouldn't necessarily hold all too well. I didn't have too many problems with it getting bumped and losing track of where it was on the dial, but it definitely didn't feel like it was a tight dial that was going to stick together.
Right. And I will say this, though, you can max out on will, whereas you can't max out on shards.
And that's probably...
So maybe that's why.
That's probably part of the reason why you have that rule in place. Though it feels like, you could have easily just said, hey, you have a hand limit of this amount, or you have a resource limit of this amount, and it would have been just fine.
So speaking of hand limits, you have an open tableau of the different assignment cards, but you also start the game with 3 private assignments, which you can play them anytime that you're able to take that action. What'd you think of that? Was there any issues with the power of the private assignments compared to other players?
I really don't think so. And I could see where that might come up for some folks, but I think you always have good, interesting options in hand. And combined with the 4 that you have available that everyone can look at as kind of communal cards, you always have options in this game. So I didn't really mind that at all. The one thing I will say with that is, for whatever reason, the rule that people missed most was remembering to refill their hand after they've played a private assignment. But I didn't have a problem with the balance of that, Sean, because even with low-cost versus high-cost items, you don't get thrown too far off because there's some benefit to saving up for it. You typically get more points off of it. There's some benefit to spending things quickly, but either one is going to take up actions on your board to execute. So I didn't have too big of an issue with that. Is that something you saw as a balance issue?
I don't think so. Just something I was thinking about, because everyone has at least a shot in theory at what's out in the open tableau, depending on what you can actually afford. But it wasn't a major concern for me. Just something I thought I'd think about.
Yeah, I can get where that's coming from. So that's components art, and I will say, to go back to your point about art, I think the art on the cards looks fantastic. Fine. I don't think it's standout amazing, but I think it looks great. It looks good.
So the art's done by Sarah Ellerton and Chris Wharton. Is that the same? Are those like the penciler?
Sarah Ellerton is the penciler and colorist for Arcane Academy.
Okay, there you go. Perfect. Overall, I think production is good. I think it does everything it needs to do. Nothing's a wow, but it's all solid.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And easy enough to track and easy enough to tell. No iconography issues, at least for me, as far as that comes up.
No, I didn't have any issues with that whatsoever.
Gameplay innovation, Sean.
Well, this is a kind of game I like. This is where you're trying to become really efficient to create these combos. And actually, it could be that combo is the wrong word, and we're gonna come to that in our combo discussion. But really, you're building synergies. I want to be able to take multiple actions in a turn. If all game I'm taking 2 actions a turn and you're taking 3, Alex, you're probably gonna win. And so it's not a case where I'm necessarily trying to completely exhaust all of my board before resting, because at a certain point, my last couple actions are going to be single actions. So you have to make that tough decision. Well, I can still take a 2-action turn, but it might be better just to rest and to start doing some early 4s at a time, 3 at a time, couple 3s at a time. And I like that. I like that tension of, should I rest? Maybe if I do this, I can get this card that's going to let me at least unexhaust a couple spots. Who knows? So I like that combo play. I like that there's a spatial relationship where you set these. I haven't seen a game that really does something like that. I mean, there are certainly cards that can chain off each other in other games, but I really like that you are in control of your board and how your action selection is going to most benefit you. And what's cool is you can even place new tiles on top of old tiles. So maybe you've spent a bunch of time with this, multiple shard tile to get a bunch of shards. Now you're transitioning to will, so you can replace it with something else. Lots of cool options here. So I thought it was pretty innovative. Eric Lang is kind of the crazy professor designer. This is how his mind works, I think, where with all of these combos interacting, or all of these synergies interacting off of each other.
Yeah, and I think it plays well together for sure. I think where this game shines the most is in that path building, in that where you're grabbing a tile and you're adding it to your board and building those connections and using them in different ways. And I found multiple paths to victory. The most recent game I played of this, I filled out my entire board with tiles with a ton of connections, and there's one card in the deck that lets you get extra points based on those connections on the board.
Right. A lot of points.
Worked really well in that game for me. But I've had games where I didn't build that many tiles and I just kind of worked in one little area and kept chaining off of things and blitzed, got to the, finished off the assignments faster and triggered endgame faster. So I think there's definitely multiple ways to win this. You can go with an item-heavy strategy where you're activating items a lot. You can go with a strategy that's more spell-heavy. You can combine and do a little bit of both and still have good success in this game.
Sure.
And I like that. There's a little bit of take that in there too. There's certainly moments where you can kind of shank the other player just a little bit. It's not so much where it's going to kill anyone's experience, I don't think.
Right.
There are moments where you would have choice of who to pick on to some degree, but usually that's more of a decision within the game and not something where outside of game elements come into it.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The take that was very minimal. It wasn't super punishing. So some of the combos, like for example, there's an item that costs 8 shards. I think it's worth 4 points, but it says pick another item. And for every prestige, the victory point, marker that you place on it, it counts double, for example. So now cards don't typically get prestige markers placed on them. You need a particular card that has an activated ability that you then have to activate that places that prestige. So like there's one, for example, that says pick an opponent. That opponent either gives you a shard or you get a prestige point. I like that. That's an interesting choice there. Or there's one that just says put a prestige token on this card itself. And there's a bunch of other things. So that's an example of a cool combo in this where you might get that card early that gives you the points, and then you're looking for a card that gives you those prestige markers. And that's something for other players to keep aware of. Hey, he's got this card here. Let's make sure that we keep these other cards away from him if possible.
What do you think about the game end piece of this? Because I think that had most people more puzzled.
Yeah, it was a little weird. So basically, if you complete your 8th assignment, you get the end game marker, which is not worth any points or anything like that. And then everyone gets another turn, including yourself. So typically, you'll either see finish it out so everyone gets an equal number of turns. So
and you get 2 points or something from the card.
Like that. Or everyone else but you gets a final turn. Very rarely will you see you get an extra turn too. And maybe that's just an incentive to close the game early, but I don't know. That was a little bit of a weird choice for me, and I don't see it as a negative necessarily. I'm just trying to figure out what was behind that design decision.
I don't know. And I'd be curious too. What I'll say is with most games the reason you'd have even numbers of turns is to prevent someone from getting an advantage typically.
Sure. With
this one, there's so many turns, and the turns themselves are so fast, it's hard to think one extra turn either way is typically going to make the difference in a game. It might. Scores can definitely be pretty close, but it's not usually going to be that big of a deal. I think that may be part of the reasoning that went into that. I don't know. It's interesting that they have a first player marker, but really it has no effect on the game at all. So I thought that was interesting. And it's one of those two, oddly enough, where you don't get a benefit if you're second or third player, even though you might end up with fewer turns.
Right.
So, yeah, I thought that was odd, and I don't totally know the design reasoning behind it.
Yeah.
Be curious to ask Eric at some point.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that the turns go pretty quickly. I'd agree with that. I think that it's a good pace to this game. Very rarely will you have an AP moment. I mean, they can come up from time to time, but for the most part, they don't arise. And that's not to say that there aren't interesting decisions to be made, but there's usually a best decision that's pretty clear, I think, but only because you're kind of setting yourself up for that. So you're pre-planning for that. And so I like that. I like that it's not that tactical of a gameplay. It's more strategic in that way because you're kind of setting up these combos, which is something that I enjoy.
Yeah, and I like how that you have that management of the board. When do I rest? When do I grab another tile? When do I try and squeeze as much as I can out of this? And what's the timing of the end game going to be? There's a lot of thought that goes into this, even though the turns themselves are very fast. I like the interesting decisions here. And I think there are interesting decisions here, Sean, in terms of the combos you can set up and how you go about this game. But every game's felt different, and I haven't gotten sick of this one. And I've played it a good number of times since I've had it. So I've definitely played this one more than you. I have not gotten sick of this, and it's definitely more my style of game than yours in some ways, in that it's shorter.
Yeah, sure.
But not, I don't know. It also has, so let's talk about this now.
Wouldn't Seven Wonders Duel be more your style of game then?
It wouldn't at all, in fact. You were talking about how you prefer this most at 2 players. And can you go into that?
Yeah, I think so. So okay, you've played it all player counts.
I have.
I have not played this at 4 players. I found there to be just a bit of downtime at 3, nothing terrible. And so I think that there'd obviously be a little bit more at 4. At 2 players, it seemed to really shine for me. It's felt a little bit like a duel, not a Seven Wonders duel, but an Arcane Academy duel.
A magic duel?
Yes, but it was good at 2. It was excellent. At 3. It was excellent at 3 as well. So I don't know that I'd be quick to pull this out at 4 necessarily. I certainly wouldn't turn it down at 4, but I'd probably prefer to play this at 3 or 2.
And for you, the sweet spot's 2 as a dueling game.
Yeah, possibly.
It kind of has that. It can have that Motainai feel for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Where you're going toe to toe and trying to go up against what the other person's doing, even though you're not really drafting or benefiting off of what they're doing.
True, but you are in Motainai possibly developing a bunch of helpers to give you extra actions to benefit from the actions that the tasks that get played. So it kind of feels that way too, in that you're trying to maximize your turns.
I would say I like this best probably at 3.
Okay.
I think at 4, the downtime gets to be just a little too much. I think it's still very playable at 4. There isn't really much as far as scalability goes, and I don't think there needs to be in this one. With 2, it worked really well too, but I think with 3, I like having those other options. There's some more decisions as far as which opponent does this target? Could I potentially get some different benefit or go after someone else because of that? And as a result, I think I liked it a little bit better at 3, but I think it plays well at all of those player counts. I didn't have a problem with it at 2, 3, or 4. So I think it worked out pretty well in any case there. So Sean, anything else to talk about as far as gameplay goes?
Well, I find this enjoyable. I find it quick. The setup is minimal. I think it's pretty quick to set up. Oh, the weird component thing is they give you a bag for the tiles.
Oh, yeah.
Every time, besides the first time that I've played this, I've just taken them out and put them face down. They have backs to them, and it's just quicker to just pull a tile off a stack.
Like an unnecessary component in there for some reason.
I mean, sure, that's cool, but I haven't preferred to use it. But I enjoyed this style of game where you are trying to maximize your turns and you're trying to be efficient, trying to create combos, trying to feel clever. I love it when I'm like, okay, I would love to get this action back to back. Can I do that? Yes. And just creating those chains was really enjoyable. I like the little incremental advantages you're getting from the assignment cards that you're putting into play. And I think it's just a really solid, quick, light game. At 3 players, it takes, 25 minutes?
Maybe a little more than that.
You think so?
Yeah, a little more.
30 minutes?
Yeah, 30 to 40.
Really? Okay. About 15, 20 minutes at 2 players. Would you? No?
Yeah, okay. That's about right.
It feels quick to me. It feels really quick. Yeah, I could see myself pulling this out pretty often.
I think I like that it's so easy to teach. The combo play and what it does as far as the connections and how you build your board is rewarding. It makes you feel clever and it makes you feel powerful instead of powerless.
Okay.
So I enjoy all of that about this game. I think it does a lot of things really, really well. Guild, not a ton to say about this one, mainly because, and let's talk about this, this has been, I think, as I said in the intro, criminally underhyped, Sean.
Yeah.
Criminal. Like, I know the Dice Tower did a review of this. At least as far as I know, I haven't seen this at Empire. I haven't heard about it much elsewhere, and I think that's a bummer because I think people are missing out on this one.
Yeah, I think it's really solid, and I can't tell you why it's flying under the radar. I haven't heard other podcasts talking about it, but it's a pretty solid game that I would definitely encourage people to check out.
So Phil Hendrickson says, I just got to play Arcane Academy last weekend. I enjoyed the engine building with tiles and cards. With the right planning, you can build combos to make mega turns Luck of the draw affects both the tiles and cards you can get, but in a 1 hour game, that's not a big deal. And I would say less than 1 hour.
Right.
Typically, even with teaching time.
So over here in the Duchy, we rate our games on a 6-point scale. So if a game's a 1, it's poorly designed but playable, not necessarily fun. A 6, however, on the other side of the spectrum, is an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. I'm struggling with this one. It's either going to come down at a 4 or a 5. This is definitely a game that I want to have available to us to play, whether it's in my collection, your collection at Empire. I think it's really solid. I think that it is quick enough if I'm sitting at Empire and we're waiting for the rest of the crowd to show up on Wednesday night. You know, a couple of us can pull this out. We can kill 30, 35 minutes playing this game. It's a lot of fun. 2 players, I'd play this a couple times in a row. There's enough in there to kind of feel things out, to try out different strategies. Like you said, there are multiple paths to victory. So ultimately, I think I'm going to give this a 4. It's a good game, worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. And I'd say probably a high 4, but not quite a 5 because I'm not going to think to pull this out a lot. But in the right situation, which is, you know, worth playing just not all the time, I think is what fits this best. So a very solid, possibly a high 4.
Very good. It shouldn't be any surprise to anyone who knows my game tastes and know what I tend to like. I named this one the Game of Dice Tower Con.
Right.
It's a 5. It's
Okay.
a solid 5 for me. It doesn't rise to the level of a 6.
You didn't play a 6 at Dice Tower Con?
I don't think I did.
Oh, man.
At least not as far as a new play or a new game.
All right.
I did play a lot of 5s, but not a 6, I don't think.
Happy Salmon's not a 6?
Oh, well, okay, maybe. All right, we'll think about that a little bit
Actually,
more.
I think Happy Salmon's probably a 5. There's no way that could be in my top 10.
It probably wouldn't be a contender, right?
Yeah, not a true contender.
So, fair enough. Anyway, but like I said, I played a lot of 5s, and this was definitely one of them. I think Eric Lang did a great job with this one.
And Kevin.
Sorry, mainly because I know him more as a designer, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know Kevin as much, and I may have played plenty of his games. I think this one is definitely a standout. It's, as I said, easy to teach, easy to learn, has a decent amount of depth for what you have, plays fairly quickly, and I think there's good space for it in a lot of people's collections, if I had to say. I like this combo element of putting tiles out there, figuring out your own path, building out your own a board that best fits the cards, best fits the situation, best fits how you want to try and go about winning this game. I think gamers are going to enjoy this. I don't know if it's gateway, but I think you could certainly teach it to a newer gamer and be just fine with it. So as a result of that, I give it a strong recommendation, and a strong recommendation for me in this case is a 5. A great game. Will rarely turn down a play of it, and given how quick it is, I think it's hard to say I'd turn down a play of Arcane Academy.
Sure.
And it works in enough player counts and player situations. I think it can fit the gap, especially if, another group's finishing up a game. You can squeeze in a good one of this one pretty quickly and be done with it. So I think it's got a good space in the collection, and I'm going to hold on to it, I think.
Cool.
Arcane Academy, I give it a strong recommendation.
All right, well, that's going to do it then for our review of Arcane Academy from IDW. A 5 from Alex, and a very strong 4 from Sean.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double-Take.
All right, this week we're looking back at episode 62, Rise of the Dress Lords. All right, I gave this one, and we're talking about Rococo this week, I should say.
Yes.
This was I think at the time, Spiel nominee or Kenner Spiel nominee?
Kenner Spiel.
All right.
Oh, definitely Kenner.
Okay, well, no, certainly for weight it would be.
Oh, yeah.
No doubt about it. So this is a game where you are making pretty dresses and also suits.
Yeah.
Back in sort of the Baroque period, I guess.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, I'm on it. I'm firing on all cylinders here, Sean. It's a game that's hand management, kind of has deck building elements.
More hand building in a sense. Well,
yeah,
kind of deck building.
I mean, you're certainly building a deck as part of this.
Yes.
But the hand management, it has an interesting mechanic of how it handles that,
right? For
sure. Along with worker placement card.
No, so you're taking resources. You're taking silk or silk or something. I forget the two cubes. But then there's also different bolts of colored cloth that you're or Yeah, garments. I don't know anything about clothes making.
Excellent.
So
good job.
But you're taking those, and then if you're able to play the correct master card or the second level card from your hand to build those dresses, to make those dresses or suits.
We are struggling with this one.
If you're going to weld them together.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Then you get to place control token on these different ballrooms. So there's an area control element there. And then based on where you place them, you might also get a bonus. And just really cool scoring at the end of the game for controlling these different ballrooms. There's a fireworks display at the end of the game. And so if you have people in the King's Ballroom, you're able to move them up to score some extra points. You're also building these decorations, which are worth additional points. Lots of stuff going on in this game. What did you give it, Alex?
At the time, I gave it a 5, but I predicted with the double take, I would ultimately give it a 4, that I wouldn't pull this off the shelf enough. It might wear out its welcome a bit, and that ultimately the score would drop a little on this one. So it was a 5 at the time, but I predicted it would drop.
And I gave it a 5, but I was leaning towards a 4.
Yeah, you were kind of in between.
Yeah.
But ultimately settled on a 5.
I've played this several times since our review. It is a super solid 5. Super solid 5. Yeah, I've played this a bunch, actually. And I think it's a fantastic game. And the more I've played it, the more I've come to enjoy it. There's so much to do. The hand management aspect of this game it's very different. It's a very different way to do it. And the area control is really strong. So it's going to stay a very solid 5 for me.
I think because of how my game tastes have evolved to where I've enjoyed these heavier, it's not super heavy of a game, but it's heavy enough.
Sure.
Where I've enjoyed those more, it ultimately sticks at a 5.
Oh, good.
I think the hand management of this is done brilliantly. I love the mechanics in this game. And yeah, it's a game that I enjoy enough and have enough fond thoughts of. And I think I've played it at least once since our review in the year that has passed. Yeah, it sticks at a 5. I don't have any reason to knock it down a notch. It's definitely enjoyable and worth checking out. We were talking in that episode a lot about if you didn't play this one because the theme didn't attract you, if you're a gamer that enjoys games, enjoys on the slightly heavier end of games, not super heavy again, this is a great game. And I would encourage people, if the theme is really what's off-putting for you, look past it, because I think you'll find a worthwhile game in here for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And it's got just a fantastic design pedigree. It's designed by Matthias Kramer along with Louis Maltz and Stefan Maltz. Yeah, it's just great. Now, over on the Guild, Phil Hendrickson was also nice enough to chime in on Rococo. He says, "We don't play Rococo often, but really enjoy it when it comes out. The combination of deck building and area control works well, and it looks great on the table. The unusual theme also might attract some new players to try a medium-weight Euro. I'm glad to have the game around."
Yeah, I think that's about fair.
So I think it's pretty interesting that given that we both give it 5s, but we were leaning towards 4s, or at least that was a possibility, that a year later we've gotten enough plays of it that it stays at 5s for both of us. I think that says a lot about Rococo. So go check that out. We're going to head over to our discussion topic, but before we do, let's have a quick word about our sponsor.
Ahoo, Guilds of London.
So wait, is this what you're going for?
Werewolves of London.
So first of all, werewolf and guilds have different numbers of syllables.
Yeah.
Second off, the way you do London is not clipped at the end like he does it.
You're nitpicking,
you do it all
Sean.
sing-songy.
Look, acknowledge my greatness as a performer.
I will do no such thing.
Okay.
Instead, though, let's talk about some games from Tasty Minstrel, including Guilds of London, which you and I have not had a chance to play, but our buddy Mike Fitzgerald has talked this game up. An interesting hand management action selection game, medieval London, where you're trying to gain control of different guilds, send people off to the colonies. Sounds really interesting. The one I have played, though, is Thieves Market, which is also currently available, just came out from Kickstarter, where you are manipulating dice to try and buy cards to gain some special powers and have the most infamy at the end of the game.
Check out TMG at playtmg.com. This week, tied into our discussion of Arcane Academy, which has some degree of combo to it, Sean had the idea of talking about combos in games. Sean, what direction did you want this to go in here?
All right, so I thought a lot about this. I had a 5-hour drive today, and so I kind of fleshed this out in my head a while on that drive. And here's the way I see it. I come from a background playing Magic where I loved combo decks. And in that sphere, a combo deck is a deck that wins in a very unusual way. In fact, it kind of ignores the normal mode of play and lets you get attacked or lets you kind of get dominated in a certain area until you pull off this amazing combo that, oh, look, I just won through kind of an unusual way. And so I think that can certainly happen in board games, but I think more often we're not necessarily talking about that type of combo, but we're talking about some kind of strong synergy that works together. And sometimes it can rise to that level of combo, like you'll see in Magic decks, but not always. And really it's just more about creating strong, powerful effects so that your turns or your actions are more efficient or more powerful than everyone else. So can I take a minute to talk about my favorite combo decks in Magic the Gathering?
Sure,
Yay.
Sean. I'm going to go, again, watch more of the Dodgers Nationals on my computer.
So in Magic, there are usually 3 archetypes. There's usually aggro, control, and combo. And they kind of have a paper, rock, scissor effect. And I loved combo decks. The very first combo deck was called Prosperous Bloom, which involved a card called Cadaverous Bloom. It was a black-green enchantment.
Cadaverous?
Cadaverous Bloom.
That sounds better.
Yeah. What did I say?
Cardaverous?
Oh, sorry. Cadaverous Bloom. And a blue draw card called Prosperity, where basically you were drawing a bunch of cards with Prosperity and then discarding them to the enchantment Cadaverous Bloom to, I think it was to deal damage. And it was the first big combo deck back in like 95 or so. And I remember playing that. It was really cool. Then my all-time favorite Magic deck was called Time Sieve, or Sieve, but it's pronounced Sieve, S-I-E-V-E, where you tap it and sacrifice 5 artifacts to take an extra turn. That sounds pretty cool, but there's usually a big investment for playing those artifacts. Well, this deck played a bunch of cheap artifacts that gave me some ability when they came into play and some ability when they left play. And then I'd play a card called Open the Vaults, which returned all artifacts from the discard pile to play. So you can keep doing that, and just took a bunch of turns in a row and then got some cool effect where you were usually using a Planewalker, usually Tezzeret, to ramp them up and then have some cool game-winning end. It was awesome. And then I'll stop there. Pyromancer's Ascension was a cool one where you got to like copy spells multiple times. So you do Time Warp, which is extra turns. Can you tell I love combos a lot, Alex?
You do.
So whenever a game gives me a feel of that, I'm going to enjoy it.
And I think the one where that definitely shone for you in games was Elysium.
Oh, big time.
The combo play in Elysium, I think, was incredibly rewarding for you.
Right.
And for me, too. I enjoy combos in games for sure, but that one really spoke to you.
Right. So in Elysium, you are drafting cards to bring into your domain, which is kind of your top tableau, and you get to use their cool effects, either immediate effects, ongoing effects, or you can tap them once around, but then eventually you need to move them from the domain down to your Elysium where you're going to score points for them. And that's a really cool choice. How long am I going to keep getting this benefit versus how quickly do I want to move this down, because there's a race for creating some of these set collections for points. And there's just some super cool combos that you can pull off in this game. And I think I love that cleverness to it. I love feeling like, oh, I can do this and this and this. It's the difference between taking, a quick 15-second turn versus a 65 versus like a 60 or 90 second turn where you're literally doing stuff the entire time. It's not you thinking, it's like, okay, I'm gonna do this, which lets me do this, which lets me tap this and do this. And I love that. And it's kind of annoying for other players.
Yeah, it can be.
Because there are times in Magic where you'll take this like 5-minute turn of you just doing all this stuff together. And that can be annoying. But I love that aspect of it. And I think what's important in Magic is that you have to be able to disrupt combo pieces. In other words, they have to be susceptible to some type of removal, or it could be broken in some way. Otherwise, it's kind of no fun. And I like playing in such a way that I have to protect that combo piece. So I think in a board game, if it's going to have some kind of game-winning combo where you just win outright, it needs to be disruptible. And if not, it's going to create some problems. So one I thought about was in Kemet, one of my favorite games. Great synergy, you might want to call it combo, where you're collecting these different power tiles, where every game is going to be different because you're collecting different tiles to give you different powers and unique abilities, and you're seeing them in different configurations, different combinations. And there's one combination there that's not great. If you get this, you're probably going to win. And that's where you are drawing 2 extra cards a turn. So you're drawing 3 of these Divine Intervention cards, and there's 2 tiles that will give you 1 each, the Mummy, and then I forget the other one. And then another tile that lets you basically discard Divine Intervention cards after you see the combat cards played. So it lets you affect the combat kind of after the fact, which is very strong. And I've pulled this off twice, and I've kind of vowed not to pull off this combo again, but you need to watch for it and keep it broken up, keep people from getting it. So someone takes the one piece, another person takes the second piece, and so on. Made it a little bit unfun. So you have to watch out for that, because sometimes that can happen. Sometimes those combos exist for a reason, and it's up to the table to police that. It's up for the table to disrupt that. So as long as you can disrupt that, I think that's okay, as long as people are aware of it.
The one game of Kemet I played was a game where I think I don't know if you did that specifically.
I did.
Okay, there you go.
And I just dominated.
And we definitely did not police it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't good.
And it was a 3-player game. It's easier to pull off in 3 players and harder to disrupt in 3 players.
So what I'm curious about is sort of this difference between synergy and combos.
Sure.
So for instance, in Baseball Highlights 2045, first mention, my favorite game of all time, I think a lot of the play in there is far more synergy.
Sure.
Where if you have robots that chain off of one another, you have pitchers that work together, strong defense, strong offense, that can be an area where things can kind of chain together, or good speed on the base paths.
Right.
But I don't know how much of that's combo play. In some expansions, though, they have things like your next natural gets a single if you've already played a natural this game, or something like that.
Right.
And so I think there can be combo play within that, but I think that's far more about synergies.
Well, I think it's a spectrum. So I think on one hand, you have cards that, these things work well together. Where you say, this card on its own is not that good, and this other card on its own is not that good either, but together, they're greater than the sum of their parts. And so you can have cards that are, or not, I keep saying cards, because it seems like a lot of times it's some kind of card play or something. Yeah. But where there's a greater level of synergy, and eventually you get to the other side of the spectrum where it's just full out combo, where it's just some huge, strong, powerful effect that is potentially game winning on its own and done in such a way that's different than the rest of the game's kind of played.
The one that came to mind for me as far as something that has ridiculous combos in it routinely was Puzzle Strike.
Oh, okay.
What did you think I was getting at?
Well, we'll save that. I'll come back to it.
Okay. Puzzle Strike was one where you would get these turns that could last a decent chunk of time, because you were just, this one changed into this one, this gets me another action, this one gets me another action, this one gets me another action, this one changed into this, it gets me another tile, which then gets me another action.
And I think that's the case with most deck builders.
Yeah.
Or chip builders in this.
In the case of Puzzle Strike.
Yes. Because that's one of the first things that really attracted me to Dominion was, I can chain these multiple cards together to get this crazy turn where I'm doing all these crazy effects. And that's what I'm talking about, where it's one person has a quick turn and the next person has this 2-minute turn, again, where they're doing something the entire time. And I enjoy that. And I think that that's prevalent in a lot of deck builders, like Puzzle Strike.
Hooray!
Yay! So Seasons, you still haven't played Seasons?
I think I played it once.
Did you play Seasons?
You keep thinking I haven't. I did play Seasons once.
Did you like it?
It was all right.
Seasons is amazing. Seasons is fantastic because it's got great synergy or combo plays, whatever you want to call it. You're playing cards through a tableau. It seems like there's a lot of tableau games that deal with synergy or engine building combo. They're all kind of that thing. In fact, our buddies over at Low Player Count just did an episode on tableau games, and I was kind of thinking about that as it relates to this, because they tend to have that engine building synergy aspect to them, which can ultimately lead to combos. For the flip side of this, though, we had a comment over in the guild, didn't we?
Yeah, Chris G went off on this. Well, not off in terms of just, railing. Anyway, I'll read the whole thing. Chris G says, I am going to go a bit against the grain here and argue that combo play can quite often be detrimental to some games. What makes combos satisfying is a combination of the experimentation and discovery process that uncovers the synergies and the awesomeness of the gameplay consequences. You're given a toy box in the game, and not only do you feel when you get an awesome new toy, you also feel clever for coming up with the idea to make that new toy in the first place. This is the idealized scenario. In practice, many combo games are often let down by lack of variety and balance. The fact that many combo games have several highly effective, even OP combos means that the gameplay often reduces to an exercise in memorization and execution of these tried and tested methods, and the strategic and tactical depth of the game shrinks as alternative playstyles are punished by players abusing these core combos. There are exceptions, of course. Motainai is a great example, but so many other games fall victim to this and are really worse off for their attempts to implement effective combo play without being careful about ensuring it doesn't break the game. Good combo games are fantastic experiences of satisfying experimental fun. Bad combos, even in otherwise good games, turn gameplay into a formulaic step-by-step execution of a prescribed patterned plan. What do you guys think, he asks. And I'll say on the front side of that, Motainai, I thought was a great example to bring that up.
Absolutely.
That's one where there is not one dominant strategy. You have to be responsive to what's out there, what's in your hand, what's available, what kind of works you're building. So yeah, I think he's right that Mutant does it perfectly as far as combo play.
And I think Carl Chuduk as a designer in general is great at that, whether it's innovation, whether it's impulse, Glory to Rome. I think there's some tremendous combo play in those designs.
On the other side of that, he's right. For instance, a game like Praetor was completely broken by not properly realizing what kind of combos would work in this game.
Yeah.
And as we were talking about, probably not playtesting enough and seeing that, oh, hey, there's this thing that can be ridiculously broken and make the game a boring slog for everyone else and really a runaway problem.
And it was pretty formulaic. I went through these steps to generate just a ton more points than anyone else.
And on future plays, maybe we'd have a better way of stopping you there.
Right.
And
wait, does that mean you're going to play more plays of Praetor?
No.
Oh.
No.
Because I'd play.
Life is too short, Sean.
But Praetor's good when it's fixed.
Yeah, okay.
It is, but that's fine.
All right. Allegedly.
Yeah.
Sources say.
In your mind, what's the combo play in Motainai? How does that work?
So Motainai is interesting in that you're also comboing off of what the other person's doing.
Sure.
So there's combo play in the works you have. There's also combo play in the helpers that you bring in. I think the helpers are where you often find most of the combo play in that game, because you might have some action where you're grabbing a monk that someone else just played and bringing in, say, a smith, and then playing a smith yourself, and then that smith can train into two smith actions, and you complete two paperworks or something, and blitz to the finish.
We just lost half our listeners, but
yeah, sorry about that.
I find it interesting.
Yeah, I know, and
I'm like, ooh, Motainai.
For me, it's me thinking about, I probably want to play more Motainai. I haven't played that in a long time, and I really love that game. That's the combo play to me. It's interesting in that you're not totally in control of the combo.
Right.
You're kind of waiting for someone else to set you up for something.
But I also think some of the cards that you're playing as your works that give you special abilities.
Yes.
Like one of my favorite things was it Poem? The paper poem that says whenever you complete a paperwork, return it and then complete the top card of the deck for free. Oh, I love that card.
Right. And then there's always a decision as to whether you use Poem on itself and just flip out another work.
Right.
Or you keep that out as something to chain into repeatedly.
And then just build a bunch of paper cards and hopefully get some more expensive metal cards or clay cards or whatever. Yeah.
But there are situations where you might want to just turn the poem in and flip up the top card of the deck.
Especially late game or whatever. So yeah, I think there's some tremendous ones there. Okay, Alex, here's the one I thought you were going to mention. The big one. Millennium Blades.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh, okay. Enough said. Moving on. So yeah, Millennium Blades, I think, is a great example. And it makes sense because it's a CCG simulator, right? Collectible card game simulator. And so I think it makes perfect sense that it has these cool combos. And some of them are, again, it's just synergy. If you have these couple cards, it's going to work well with your deck box, which is going to give you some more points. But there's also the ones that say, what was the one that scores you like 100 points? That you managed to pull off that one time?
I don't remember, but it was awesome.
Yeah, it was like have one of every color and one of every type, I think.
Something like that.
And that's easily disruptible, but no one disrupted it. And it scored you a ton of points.
Well, I think I also had played it out fairly late in the round.
Sure.
It wasn't something where you saw that's what I was doing.
I
don't know.
No,
I don't remember.
I think it's your deck box or something.
Oh, it might have been.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember. There's some card that does that, though.
Yeah. So I think that's a fantastic example. And then, of course, a lot of the different LCGs out there that lend themselves, like Netrunner. I played a Wayland Corporation deck that was called a tag and bag deck, where basically you want the runner to come steal your agendas, because then you can tag them, which is a game mechanic, which then lets you deal damage, which kills them in the alternate way. Normally you're just trying to be the first to score 7 points. So it's something I love about games. I love when you can feel clever, when you can play the game or do things that are a little bit outside the box of what's the typical course of the game. I really enjoy that. I agree with Chris, though, that it can become formulaic, especially if it can't get disrupted easily. And there's some things where, some games are multiplayer solitaire where you can't disrupt someone's combo and they put the pieces together and boom, they've got some grand thing going. So those are my thoughts. I love combo games. I love that synergy, and I love when a game makes you feel clever. And a game like Arcane Academy definitely did that.
Very cool. All right, before we wrap this episode up, naming runner-ups, and this was yet again another Schwazi week. But this was an unusual Schwazi week, Sean.
It was.
There was a clear top 3. So the rest of our winner this week, as we mentioned at the top, was Spell of the Ball, submitted by Jeremy Robinson about an hour before we recorded this.
Yeah, like right in under the wire.
Very nice, very nicely done by him. The other top ones were the Name Father with Stitchcraft. That's Steve O'Rourke. That would have been his 7th if we'd picked that. Whoa, boy.
However, his check didn't clear this week, so we didn't pick him.
Yeah, sorry, Steve. The one that we were schwazzing between was actually one from our buddy Chris Holm, who's going to be running the Baseball Highlights 2045 tournament in Empire coming up this Wednesday.
This would have been his first name.
It was so close. And by the way, Chris, the odds were in your favor, too, with this. So here's how we did this. We did a weighted version of this because I liked both names well enough. I thought Spell of the Ball should be in the mix. Sean had a slight preference, but enough of a preference for Chris's name, which was Runic Tunics and Rubrics.
Oh,
incredibly clever.
It's great. It's fantastic. Clever. It works on all the levels, right? Because you've got magical clothes, Runic Tunics, which is the Rococo and magic, and then also Rubrics, which is a way to grade assignments. Perfect.
Rhyming, very well done.
Yeah.
And a good name, for sure. I just liked Spell of the Ball. I liked how that rolled off the tongue as far as an episode title. I thought both would have been worthy winners. Even Stitchcraft would have been.
Absolutely.
There are actually more in here that would have been. There were a lot of good names this week.
Yes.
So here's how we did it. With Schwazi, Sean put 2 fingers on the phone, and I put 1 finger on the phone.
We agreed upon this. I wasn't cheating.
Yes. No, he didn't cheat.
We decided to weight it in Chris's favor.
Right.
Just the way it worked out.
First round. And we did this best of 3 because we have to do it best of 3 for some reason.
Yep.
First round, it went to me, my 1 finger on the phone. Second one went to one of Sean's fingers. And then the third and final round, it went back to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Sean, if you really want to, we can always go with Runic, Tunic, and Rubrics. And he's like, nope, respect the Schwazi.
Absolutely.
And we will respect the Schwazi.
So this was inspired by a game of Twilight Imperium 3 that surprisingly went far too long. It was a 6-player game, and we decided to roll a d20 to see who won. But based on board position, we kind of negotiated for the distribution of the numbers. So I wasn't doing great, so I only got 1 through 3. But I think Max ultimately won, but he was in really good position, so we gave him 4 through 10 or something.
Right.
And I think he wound up winning the die roll.
Nice.
So that's where that thought of kind of weighting it based on preference or whatever came from.
So here's the rest of the top 6. BJ from Board Game Gumbo with School of Hard Frocks. Nice.
Yep.
Liked it. Chris Schreiber had a bunch this week. Chris, this is one of the weeks that Chris put in 12 names, if not more. He came with, and he spelled this differently on there. I don't know if he meant this as Frabracadabra or Fabracadabra.
Fabracadabra.
Probably Fabracadabra.
Yeah,
was my guess.
Fabulous.
Yeah, that was a solid
Because you're
one
making
too.
fabulous dresses and suits.
Matthew S., to wrap up our top 6, came with, if it ain't Baroque, don't hex it. Nice. Clever. Probably a little too long for us to choose for an episode title.
But very clever. But
very clever.
Just great.
And this one wasn't actually part of the top 6, but it made me chuckle anyway, so we're going to include this. Jeff Epner with the Harry Potter School for kids who can't spell good or do other things good too.
Is that a reference to the fact that they don't actually teach the wizards in the Harry Potter in Hogwarts?
It's a Zoolander reference.
Oh, is it?
It's a Zoolander reference, Sean.
Well, can I just
look it up?
Can I just point out?
Look it up.
That they're going to be horrible citizens because they don't actually learn math or geography.
That's the interesting thing about. By the way, as I was describing with the IP of this, the spell casting is based off of math. You have to prove theorems. You have to prove theorems in order to cast a spell.
Oh, okay.
So it is actually highly math based. So you're wrong again.
No, I'm talking about in Hogwarts.
You're still wrong.
In Hogwarts?
Oh, well, Hogwarts, they may have math. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, let's wrap up this episode because I need to get some rest, Alex. A long day of driving. I've got 2 days at the classroom, continuing legal education. Fortunately, it's not an Arcane classroom like Arcane Academy.
Get that book learning done, Sean.
All right. I'll work on that. So that's it for episode 114, Spell of the Ball. Until next time, this is Sean.
And Alex.
And Hail Hydra.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on October 13th, 2016. Our theme music is provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please also consider supporting us on Patreon. And thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games and Meeple Realty. Check out their awesome titles at playtmg.com. And for high-quality board game inserts, check out meeplerealty.com. Meeple Realty, think inside the box. We'll see you back here next week. Until then, game on!
Shame, ring, ring, ring. Shame, ring, ring, ring. Shame.
Are you shaming me for missing the credits there?
Okay, so normally you read off your phone, but today you had to be fancy and bring a laptop.
Yep.
And
it throws me off. Well, the show intros and outros, for sure, it throws me off. I also have weird eyes. I do. I've had cataract surgery on my right eye. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so
that
I can't
was
read. I can't read out of the right eye, really.
At all?
Well, it's I can see distance, but I can't read anything up close.
Does that affect your teleprompter usage?
Not really.
We need to get you a teleprompter.
That would be nice. I'd
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Or just
hey,
use your
all that
phone.
Patreon money going straight into teleprompting.
Yep.
I like it.
Well, no, Mariah's our teleprompter.
Oh yeah, we did do that.
She holds the iPad.
That was a frustrating experience. Not Mariah's part. Just
Oh, jeez.
no. Just anyway.